What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Clutch Talk, episode 17 today. Again, continuing our previews of as many college football teams as we can get through. Today will be Baylor and Texas A&M. Super excited about this video today. Baylor has high expectations potentially for a college football playoff with a returning quarterback, returning coach. And then you got Texas A&M, who I think could have a big jump under Mike Elko in year two. We'll get into that. And our next video, we're also going to be breaking down top 10 games, I think, in the college football season this upcoming year, which will be very exciting for that. And yeah, also some news. I also launched a TikTok. So if you want to go follow the TikTok, it's at Clutch Talk Show. And then we also have the Instagram. If you all haven't followed that, it's at CLU_TCH Talk. So go follow those. It'll help a lot. And also, if you like this video and like this content, please subscribe to the channel. That'll help a lot. And yeah, let's get started today. We're going to start with the Baylor Bears. Out of the Big 12, 8-5 last year. Very successful to end the year. Won 6 straight games before losing the bowl game to LSU. Very high on this team this year. I think they could be very, very good, particularly offensively. And why I think they'll be good offensively is because of their quarterback, Sawyer Robertson. 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions last year. Had a very good year. Bryson Washington, 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns last year on the ground. Very underrated running back. And they get their wide receiver one back in Josh Cameron, 750 yards and 10 touchdowns. And out of the portal, they got some good receivers as well. And Cole Wilson, 630 yards, 4 touchdowns from Texas State. And Lewis Brown from Colorado State, 620 yards and 3 touchdowns. Another underrated spot, I think, to this Baylor team is they have 4 returning starters on the offensive line. Probably the most experienced offensive line in the Big 12, which I think will help a lot, particularly with having a returning quarterback. And again, the run game to me is also very underrated. They ran the ball for about 178 yards a game on 4.7 yards a carry. I expect it to be the same, and I think that's going to be what keeps Sawyer Robertson at the level that he was last year, is having the balance with the run game. I think will help him a lot and help this Baylor offense a lot. And I expect the Baylor offense to be one of the best in the Big 12. I think that's how they're going to win a lot of the games, but they also need improvement from the defense, which I'm going to get to. Some returners on the defense. You got Keaton Thomas, who had 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Devin Bobby, 3 tackles for loss and 3 interceptions. And then Jackie Marshall had 5 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. Out of the portal, they kind of got some 2 really good linebackers in Travion Barnes, who had 11 tackles for loss out of FIU. Matthew Fobbs-White was 8 tackles for loss out of Tulane. And then they get Devin Turner, who had 3 pass deflections, 3 interceptions out of Northwestern. Pass rush is still a question with this Baylor team. We really don't know what we're getting pass rush-wise other than Jackie Marshall. But the linebacker room could be one of the best in the Big 12. I really believe that. I think it could be one of the best in the country, particularly with who they got out of the portal. They added 11 portal guys last year, which is big because they were a very average defense last year. In order for Baylor to hit that next level to potentially a Big 12 championship, they need to be able to have a good defense. I think Dave Aranda knows that because he's also a defensive coach. I think he'll get it figured out. If you want to look at the numbers from last year, 34th in passing, 42nd rushing, 20th in total, 19th in scoring, 36 sacks allowed, 32nd on third down. Defensively, this is where they were average. They were 94th passing, 87th in total, 83rd in sacks, and they were above average in third down in the red zone. Again, I think Dave Aranda is going to figure it out defensively. I think he's one of the best defensive minds in the country. And I think the return of Sawyer Robertson is what's going to make this team. He does need to be better on the intermediate game. He was one of the most below-average intermediate passers in the Big 12, but his deep ball was fantastic. I think if you compare the good deep ball with good intermediate game, Baylor could be in for a very, very good year. And again, the run game is going to be a big part of that as well. We want to look at the schedule. They get Auburn at home. They go to SMU, but then they have Arizona State at home. They get Kansas State at home. They get Utah at home. Very favorable. Now they have to go to TCU as well, which is going to be difficult. But overall, I think Baylor got a very good, favorable conference schedule. Auburn at SMU in non-conference, so is pretty difficult. I'm not even going to lie, because we're talking about an Auburn team that should be much improved and an SMU team that made the playoff last year. But I digress. Record predictions, I think the worst record for Baylor is going to be 5-7. And that's because I think their non-conference is so brutal, and, let's say the wheels fall off, offensively they decrease, defensive numbers don't improve. They could lose to Auburn at SMU. They lose to Arizona State. They could lose to Kansas State. They could lose at TCU. They could lose to Utah. They could lose one of the games at the end of the year between at Arizona and Houston, just with momentum and the way things would have fell. And that would be Dave Aranda being getting fired. That'd be a new coach. That'd be Sawyer Robertson in the portal. Be a very bad deal. I don't see that happening though. I think the best scenario though, I'm gonna say 10-2. I won't say 11-1 because I think the Big 12 is so wide open and such like a fight for yourself kind of conference, fend for yourself, that I don't think that any team in the Big 12 can go 11-1 unless the schedule is just that much favorable for them. And so I think 10-2 is the best scenario, and that'd be like you lose to at TCU or at SMU, or you lose to Auburn and at TCU, something like that, and that will put them at 10-2, and I think that will get them in the Big 12 title game in the college football playoff. However, I think the most likely, I'm going to say 9-3. I'm very high on this Baylor team. I think the defense is going to improve. I think Sawyer Robertson's a very, very good quarterback, and not many people are talking about that run game and that offensive line, but I think that could bolster this team even more. And I think the losses come where I don't think they can beat Auburn. I shouldn't say I don't think they can. I don't think they will beat Auburn. I think Auburn's going to be much improved and a very good team this year. And I think they lose potentially at TCU and then one of the 3 home games between Utah, Kansas State, and Arizona State. I think those were the 3 losses coming. I don't know if that would get them a Big 12 title game just because I think the top of the conference will all go around 9-3, 10-2. So I don't know if that would get them in. But if it does, I think they have a very good chance of winning that game and going to the college football playoff. This is kind of a big year for Baylor. If they can, within the experience group that they have, particularly at quarterback, offensive line, or if they don't succeed, I think things could go very bad. But I think 9-3 is most likely. I think they can get to the Big 12 title game. I think they can get to the playoff if all the tiebreakers and all that work out for them. So that's how I feel about Baylor. Moving on to Texas A&M out of the SEC. Very good year to start the year under Mike Elko. They lose to Notre Dame game 1, but then they went on a hot streak and didn't lose for a while until November 2nd. They got their butt whooped by South Carolina, and then things never really recover. They lose to Auburn in 4 overtimes. They get kind of beat up by Texas and then lose the bowl game to USC. However, not many people are talking about, in the SEC, it's all about new quarterbacks, even around the college football world, but particularly the SEC. Alabama, new quarterback. Texas, new quarterback. Georgia, new quarterback. Ole Miss, new quarterback. Tennessee, new quarterback. Oklahoma has a new quarterback. And so there's a lot of question marks around those teams. Not around Texas A&M. They have their quarterback back in Marcel Reed, who was very good last year, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Le'Veon Moss, who to me is the best running back in the SEC, 765 yards, 10 touchdowns. When he's healthy, he's as good as there is in the country. And then Armaj Reed Adams at guard, 78% snaps, A grade. Part of that really, really good offensive line. They get Casey Concepcion out of the portal, very underrated get, 460 yards, 6 touchdowns last year at NC State. He was a little banged up with injury last year, but when he's healthy, he can get you 800 to 1,000 yards. Then Mario Craver out of Mississippi State, 368 yards and 3 touchdowns. The offensive line, to me, it's a storyline. To me, they're the best in the country. I don't think any team is better than Texas A&M's offensive line. I think that's why the run game will be elite. I think they're all going to hit 200 rushing yards in about every game they play. They're going to run the ball as much as they can. I think that will set up for play action passes and some big explosive plays offensively. I think this offense will be dynamic. And Marcel Reed, to me, is the most underrated quarterback in the SEC. SEC Media Days, I watched a lot of it. And we're talking about Lenore Stellers and DJ Lagway and Garrett Nussmeier, John Mateer. That's fair, Arch Manning. But Marcel Reed played very good, and he's a good dual-threat quarterback, and he's returning in the second year of the system. I expect him to have a big year, and he's going to prove all these haters wrong. I really believe that. So the offense, I think, will be very dynamic. The defense was a question mark. After last year, they didn't have a very good year. So if we look at that, they returned Cassius Howell, who was a good last year, 4 sacks and 7 pass deflections at defensive end, which is insane. Torian York at linebacker, 10 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. And then Will Lee, 10 pass deflections, 2 interceptions. They get TJ Searcy out of the portal from Florida, who had 3 sacks, and then Jordan Shaw and Julian Humphrey, but one from Washington, Julian Humphrey from Georgia, 6 pass deflections and 4 pass deflections, respectively. The secondary, I think, got very deep with how they return a lot from the secondary, and who they got out of the portal, I think, helps them a lot. And the rumor around this A&M defense is the defensive line looked really good in spring ball. They did very good against Texas A&M's offensive line, which is a good sign for Texas A&M's defense because of how good that offensive line is. I don't know what fall camp looks like, but I know that's what they're saying that they said about him in spring. So that's exciting for A&M. And I think Mike Elko, again, one of the better defensive minds in college football, he will figure out that defense, and he will get them improved. You'll never see Mike Elko's defense take a step back. They will always improve and improve and improve. That's what he did at Duke, what he did at Notre Dame, what he did at Texas A&M. I think Mike Elko's going to get it figured out. Offense last year, 26 rushing, 87 passing is low, and honestly, I don't know how much that'll go because I don't think they'll throw the ball a lot. I think it'll be more ground and pound. 50th in scoring, 55th sacks allowed, 23rd on third down, 17th in the red zone. Defensively, 90th in passing, that should go up just because I think they made a deeper secondary, and I think they got more talented there. 42nd rushing, 35th in scoring, 33rd on third down, 96th in the red zone. This is a big year for A&M, just because with all the experience. Like I talked about Baylor, it's another big year for both these teams. And I like A&M's schedule because they get Notre Dame third game of the year, and I think Notre Dame, even though it's at South Bend, they're going to still be trying to put C.J. Carr into the rhythm of the offense within the system. You get them early. A&M's very experienced. I think that game last year was a very good game and is a telltale sign of what it could be at South Bend. You get Auburn at home, Florida at home. You get to play Arkansas and Missouri. Now, both are on the road, but I think you're more talented than both those teams. You have to go to LSU, which is hard, and you have to go to Texas, which is hard as well. But you also get South Carolina at home, which is a big deal as well. And the best part is you get a bye after Notre Dame to reset, whether you win or lose that game, to get your mind right. So that's good. Record-wise, though, I think the worst is 6-6. And to me, that's you lose at Notre Dame, you lose to Auburn, let's say you lose to Florida, lose at LSU, lose South Carolina, lose at Texas. That's like disaster scenario. Michael could be on the hottest seat in college football. That would have to be if Marcel Reed just cannot throw the football. Because, yes, they're going to run a lot, but they're going to need a little bit of plays out of the pass game, and if he can't provide that, 6-6 is likely. Let's say the defense does take a step back. I don't find it to be possible, but if it does, that's where 6-6 would come into play. The best, I'm saying 11-1, because I think A&M's almost as talented, if not more talented, than anyone in the country. And between those three big road games that they have, with how talented they are, they can win two of those. Let's say the wheels fall off at LSU, and, Brian Kelly's already fired by October 25th. Let's say they could beat LSU, and then they beat Notre Dame earlier in the year. So, again, the thing about Notre Dame, I don't know if they're going to win, if Texas A&M is going to win against Notre Dame. But I do think getting them early in the year and trying to get C.J. Carr into the system helps A&M, and I think they have a very good chance of winning. Don't know if they will, but the chances of them winning are much higher than people think it is. The most likely, though, I'm going to say I have a mix. I think it's between 10-2 and 9-3. I don't know which one I'm leaning towards yet because between the big three road games, those are the only games I see them losing because I think they're going to be really good this year. 9-3 is very possible because I think all three teams are going to be ranked higher than A&M and all that. But 10-2 could be you win one of those like Notre Dame or an LSU. I think A&M gets in the playoff that way. 9-3, they may still get in the playoff either way if there's a bunch of chaos around them. Like, let's say South Carolina ends up being super good and you have that win over them. Or Florida, same thing. So, 10-2, 9-3, most likely. I think 10-2 will definitely get them in the playoff. 9-3 might get them in the playoff. I'm very high on this A&M team this year. I'm very high on Mike Elko. He's one of my favorite coaches in college football. And I think he's got everything figured out over there. He's got the fan base behind him and everything. So I'm very high on A&M this year. High on the returning experience they have. Because, again, retention is so important in college football. With the transfer portal being as crazy as it is, with you have a new roster coach every single year, I think retention is so important. I don't think you can have a team of full transfers and win a national championship. Like, Ole Miss tried that and failed. Ohio State had transfers, but they also had a lot of retention, particularly on that defensive line. Wide receiver room. They brought in a high school recruit in Jeremiah Smith. They had returning guys in Emeka Egbuka and all that stuff. Good experience on the offensive line. So I think you have to have a lot of retention in college football as well to win, not just transfers. I think A&M has a lot of retention that could help them a lot, and they got these key transfers on the secondary to take them to the next step, in my opinion. With that being said, that'll wrap up our video on Baylor and Texas A&M. Again, top 10 games of 2025 coming up next. Super excited about that. Again, when it comes to season predictions and conference predictions, playoff predictions, Week 0 is August 23rd, so that week of, we'll be doing our conference predictions and then breaking down our playoff predictions that 22nd, along with my Heisman pick and all that stuff. Again, go follow the TikTok and Instagram. I'll put the link or the ats in the description. Thank y'all for watching. Hope y'all have a good rest of your day. See ya.